To be here along with my wonderful colleagues, Karl Dakin and Cohen. And you should know them, but if you don't, this is a great opportunity to get to know them. Also, take the opportunity to go to their profiles, see what they're into, read their stories. Great networking opportunity. And I think that's what we're all about here is collaborating for the mutual good. Chat's wide open. We depend on chat to keep us relevant and directed in the right direction. Today's word is valuation. It has so much application not only to funding, but about everything you do, whether it's time, effort, or resources. So with that, I'll turn it over to Karl, who is the financial guru of the group, and he could share a little bit of an update and what his initial thoughts on valuation are. Karl?
Sure. Thank you, Don. I appreciate being a guest on your show this morning and a chance to talk about one of the, more difficult concepts that I have to work with on a day-to-day basis involving valuation. As I work with small businesses and community projects, we're basically asking people to put some resources on the table today with the expectation that somewhere down the road in the future, they're going to get those resources back and a little extra in the form of an appreciation or a return on their investment. And the question that everybody asks is, well, what is the value of this opportunity? And some people use a rear view mirror and say, where has this thing been? We're going to use that as a approach to valuation. And it's kind of I will say, highly inaccurate for most things I work with. I want to know where the person who's putting the resources on the table is going to get their resources back. Is that 6 months or 3, 5 years down the road? Because that's when they have the chance to get that appreciation. And that's when the value is really, truly important. Now, everybody says buy low, that's where you make your money. And quite clearly, if you can get a lower price for a share of stock or an ownership thing, but if you don't get to the exit, to the back end where they get off of the investment, it may make no difference. You can buy low and it remains low during the entire time of the investment. So I'm always debating with different people, what is the right approach? How do you go about valuation? And I'm so happy Khan's here this morning to straighten me out and tell me how to do that.
Well, that's terrific. And valuation has so much relevance, like I say, to everything we do. So, Khan, what's your update? How's your book going? And what's your initial thoughts on valuation?
Well, so far so good, my friend. Thank you for asking. The book's doing great. I actually have had a very busy week. Just got back from California. Had a wonderful session out there with a group of senior leaders and CEOs from the California Association of Realtors. And you want to talk about a group that's really focused on valuation of properties and how to really maximize and find the right fit for their clients. There they are. So it was an amazing experience, great opportunity to talk with them. And I'm hoping to keep my friend Karl honest today, because where his expertise in how to raise capital to help companies truly achieve their full valuation and their potential, I'm here on the other side, kind of going to counterbalance him a little bit, because my focus has always been on truly raising our human capital from that perspective and really bringing the real life value to our companies. Because so many times you can look at a company on paper and it has a certain value, but without the team that gets it to there and beyond, is it really worth that much? And that's a big part of anybody that I've worked with, like Karl, that's involved with those kind of investments, with those kind of valuation processes, whether it's buying or selling companies. You know this as well, Don. You've had a few of your own. It's truly the people that make the company.
Oh, so true. And it's people that is kind of the magic card because, again, if you value a business or an opportunity, there's different values, right? There's fixed asset values, which are very easy to identify. You bought this computer for so much after depreciation or whatever, this is what it's worth. when you get more into IP, that becomes a little bit more sketchy, as far as maybe software one developed or special processes. And a lot of it has to do not only with what it is and what it costs, but how does it apply to whatever you're doing and what's the future value, right? Some things you have to continue to buy every day, like supplies. Other things you invest in with a hope that over time, either through scale or through better application, you're going to get more value. And then when you get to people, it gets really sketchy because, going from buying a box of pencils to hiring somebody is a whole different skill set. And today you have to be so dynamic. I mean, I was listening to Carl and Dave show the other day, and just security now is an added cost and an investment and has value. So you have things that were never prominent before that become very focused. And you need to be able to have people who know how to value it, as well as people who know how to perceive the value that you put on it. And I guess that's where you begin negotiations or you start getting into the Q&A area. We've got Carrie here who started off with his joke of the day. It's always great to see Carrie. What do you call 2,000 mockingbirds? 2-kilo mockingbird. Okay. And now back to Carl. What's your add-on to what we just kind of shared?
Well, I'm still trying to determine if you're referring to Con and myself as sketchy, but we'll figure that out before we're done. But actually, in this case, I have to agree with Con 110% that you can have any small business, which represents a combination of products and services going to a particular market. But when you're valuing a business, your key valuation element is the management team. It's the people who are running it. Because you can have any tool, any product out there, any business opportunity, but the person who's behind it, who wields it, I mean, as an example, how many people are virtuosos in running LinkedIn? Well, Don and no one else I know. So the rest of us are basically amateurs, or we're learning novitiates, so to speak. But Don gets far more value out of his use of LinkedIn than I do so far, because he's got more experience, he's been around, he's used it more. And as a consequence, he sees opportunities and he can do things that us who are still learning have yet to understand and appreciate. And it's the same thing if I get ChatGPT or I get a copy of Word from Microsoft. I can write a little limerick, or I could write a novel. Which one is going to have the greater value? Well, it depends largely upon the author, the person who's using the tool in a particular situation to do that. So, we could have a same business, same products and services going to the same market. But if I have the founders are rookies who have never run a business before, who don't understand all the things that can and will go wrong and how to overcome those, I can assign a high risk and a low value to that because of that situation. Where if, on the other hand, I had someone who had 5 people with 20 plus years of experience, 100 years total, running the business, I'm going to have a much higher expectation, confidence level, and I'm going to assign a higher value to what otherwise would look like exactly the same business opportunity. So people are the critical difference. And I explain to people all the time when they come to me with something, I go, well, that's a concept. I said, once you have a product or service, then you're moving towards that. But until you put the management team with it, you don't have a business. The people are the thing that makes it a business, and their ability to bring those products and services to market, and all that contributes then to what is the true value that might be assigned to it based upon who's running the show.
So important, everything you just said. And, when you look at valuation, again, times are so dynamic, things are moving so fast. It's like musical chairs with less chairs and faster music.
Mm.
You got to do more to get the same, but if you really do a lot more, you can get so much more than what you're used to. What comes to mind is Harvey had just a wonderful show yesterday.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. That
you
was
know,
great.
yeah, and he actually had Jackson Hewitt on. And if you don't know who Jackson Hewitt, they're probably right up there with H&R Block.
Mm.
And his story was he started it and eventually sold it for $500 million. Had a 3-year non-compete or whatever, launched the same type of business, had to compete with his own name because his name went with the old business, and then sold that for another $500 million. And now he's got a lot of experience, over 50 some years. Now he's involved with 8 different franchises with the focus on pet care and elder care because he sees those as 2 of the biggest industries. So, in order to not only achieve a valuation, but complete a transaction based on that and continue to resource and replicate that through new opportunities is huge. But it also shows you how a communication strategy is so important. And people don't value that enough because now, with knowing Jackson Hewitt, that creates a whole association benefit. It also creates an opportunity to get resources and referrals. And everybody, or most people, and Harvey launched a second show, which is just sharing franchisors' brand story, how they got started, who they are, what they stand for is huge. So being able to leverage live streaming, LinkedIn, because everybody's got a brand, everybody's got a story. But how much of a reach does that have? How relevant is it? And how much does that reinforce their primary product or their primary way of doing business? And I think those who can take the whole comprehensive approach to valuation, and some things are, like I say, easy physical things to inventory and value. Other things are less tangible, but just as important. And, it also shows who shows like this can attract. And I believe that Jackson reached out independently only because he's an icon and legend in the franchising industry. And when you hear there's a franchise show, and that's the only show you're hearing that there is, pretty soon you want to participate in it, not only because you want to promote your business, but because you've been so infused in that industry that now you're speaking for the industry, not only your business. So there's so many moving pieces here. It's really coming up with the strategy. And, when I listen to Stephen Covey, it's always start with the end in mind. I don't know if Jackson Hewitt said, I'm going to build a business and sell it for $500 million, but he did. And then he did it again. So it wasn't like a one-trick pony. So, Con, I know you come in contact with so many people. I know Karl is so involved with diverse opportunities and individuals. How does one really leverage and scale these opportunities so you get what you're looking for at the end of the day?
Well, it's funny because, they talk about 6 degrees of separation. I cut my teeth in my early management career working for the company that actually bought Jackson Hewitt's company. So they grew. It was back in the late 90s and early 2000s during the golden age of mergers and acquisitions, all the M&As. And the company grew to be 100,000 employees spread over 100 countries. It was so diverse. And yeah, there's a lot to be said about scale and how you approach that. But so much of what we talk about valuation, it's in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, Karl was talking about it. He can assess a company and determine based on his experience, know what he's looking for. And depending on the management team, the potential of the product, everything else that's going on with that, he can determine what the value is that he anticipates this company will bring, because he's looking forward from that perspective. He looks at potential. And that's one of the ways that he evaluates companies. Well, look at where we are right now with the streaming piece, or the Zoom that we commonly use, or some of the other virtual platforms that we use. Wouldn't you have loved to have stock in Zoom before the pandemic? I mean, think about that. Think about the possibility. So much of what we do has to deal with circumstances. If you are well positioned and if you have a view to the future, I mean, visionaries like Jackson Hewitt look at a lot of these things and they anticipate. They look at where things are going. The caregiving industry, because I have friends in it and I've experienced it personally, is such a growing industry because there's millions of us that are sandwiched between taking care of elder parents and taking care of young kids. And so many of us need help and resources to be able to do that. I mean, during the Great Resignation, we lost 12 million women from the workplace because they found themselves being in the caregiver space. And most of those did not return. So you're dealing with a situation now where, are you well positioned for what might happen down the road? And looking to the future, you need to assess those risks. Do I have the right people on the right seat on the bus going in the right direction? I mean, so much of what we do with people, the value that I bring to my clients, first and foremost, beyond the numbers, it's confidence, it's peace of mind. When I work with clients, when I work with companies anywhere from $50 to $500 million revenue companies, most of them have these fancy, wonderful business plans. They have all these great ideas about how they're going to conquer the market or they're going to achieve their business goals. It's not worth the paper that it's written on, Don, if you don't have the people to execute it. And when you go into battle, you want to know, you want to have the confidence that the troops that you have by your side, your teammates, are going to execute to the degree that they need to in order to make things happen. That's where you bring the value. And that's the value that I bring to my clients on that piece. It's peace of mind. It's the confidence that they can go out and execute on their strategy. That's where truly the value of their human capital comes up.
Yeah, I mean, that's so pertinent and relevant to what people have to keep in mind. I mean, the great Wayne Gretzky always said, you know, and they asked him, what makes you so special? Because he wasn't that much bigger, stronger, faster than anybody else. He said, everybody goes to where the puck is. I always go to where the puck's going to be. Mm-hmm. And I think the visionary, the person who can see something and see in 3 years, this is what's going to be. My partner, who I always give credit to, Fred Erb, he made his fortune by buying land 5 miles outside of where the expansion in Detroit was in the 50s. And he would hold, right? And everything would grow into it. And then he'd be able to start building buildings and homes and things like that. And he'd then buy another 5 miles out, and everything would start to come to him. But I think what it demonstrates is time horizon. How many people have great ideas, but they're too early to the game? Or they have great ideas and it's going to take a few years to develop it. And if it's like, if you don't have the resources, if you don't have the time, you're going to start forcing things and actually being the starting point of the next person who's been waiting in line to say, I can pick this up now, or I can replicate this. And it's confidence with vision and the ability to communicate that vision to others. I mean, Amazon lost money every quarter for 11 years, and their valuation kept going up. Why? Because people believed in online commerce. People believed in the ability to build that infrastructure in order to scale that business. And that's where expenses have to be identified and valued differently, right? Is this a future investment? Is this something that's a maintenance type situation? And also, what have people done before with their vision? So I'm sure Jackson Hewitt had an easier time the second time around after being successful the first time around. And you always have to kind of look beyond where you're at and also share that vision, that valuation to the people that you're partnering with. Could be your teammates, could be your service and product suppliers, could be your investment group. And that's why having something that's consistent, because people don't want to be in the blind. No one likes surprises. People would like to say what's going on, what's exciting. I mean, Tesla is another great story. Took a lot of time, a lot of special capital investment, and now they got a valuation of 600 billion that goes up and down by about 80 billion every day. So, Karl, I mean, this is kind of fascinating from a standpoint of how creative one can be in creating their story from what they're doing and also sharing their story.
Yeah, I was sharing before the show started today that I sat through a new product demonstration yesterday that has been 13 years in the making. And this was a brand new invention. It's a window insulation that is demonstrating how to reduce 95% of the UV and heat going through a window. And the inventor was telling his backstory of 13 years of showing this to people who go, well, that can't work. He goes, it's right here, it's in front of you. And they would go, well, that can't be real because it's so different from everything we have. And he was challenged by his ability to communicate, his ability to get organized, his ability to bring the product to market. And yesterday was one more step in that journey. He's still a long ways from being where he wants to be, but it's interesting because different people would look at him at different points of time, and I'm sure somebody's going, "Wow, that's going to be great. That's going to be worth a fortune someday." Now, is that someday tomorrow? Can they scale quickly? You know, how quickly can we overcome status quo expectations? Where convince people that yes, this is different, it is better, and therefore it has value. But every time I work with a company rolling out a new innovation, this is the same sequence of events you go through to try to tell your story and understanding where you're at. So again, as we've talked about in valuation today, to me, the value is forward looking. It's when the investor gets out of the investment, where they cash out at. Well, if they had invested 13 years ago, they'd still be waiting to get out of their investment because it's taken all this time for this.
Well, I think we lost him.
Well, we're getting them right back though.
And here I am again now. Now I'm on the right side. So, and I meant that not from a political standpoint. That's just a physical location. But it's interesting to see how value may take time to be realized, time to be appreciated, and other people come to agreement, because part of being valued is everybody else's perception of where you're at, what you're going to do. So like being on LinkedIn Live with you guys this morning, it's elevating my brand, my appearance, what I'm doing, and it's contributing to my value. Now, does that mean tomorrow that I'm going to be rich and famous? No, I've got a lot more work to do. We've got, this is a long-term investment. And I see the value from being on this program and other programs, including my own successful funding show, but it's a long-term investment. So my value will go up, but it's going to go up in pieces. It's not an overnight success kind of a thing. I don't expect a call tomorrow from somebody that's rich and famous going, Karl, where are you at? Come on down. We're going to have to work on that a while.
Well, you make some great points, Karl, and how one accelerates is how one associates. And a lot of times people are just experts in a core competency, but then they try to become an expert in business or in sales or in marketing, and they just don't have it. And they're diluting the time and effort in what they do have. And I think the comfort that one brings to investors or team players, because even your management team only has so much patience, right? A lot of small companies or startups usually share some equity upside, but what's the use of having equity in something that has no liquidity, has no market yet? And so you've got to continue to keep everybody in the game by hitting your numbers or by sharing your vision and accomplishing it. And the best way is to outsource, is to have fractional people when you can't really afford or have the work for full-time people, especially people of high value. You know, and they say cheapest labor is the most expensive thing anybody can have in a business. And you'd rather have 2 days of somebody who knows exactly what they're doing and how they can help you than 5 days of conversations and I think this and I know that. Plus that whole question of when you get hit by a bus gets taken care of because of, hey, I got a relationship with somebody. One of the values the show continues to validate for me is if it's interesting enough, this medium for a Jackson Hewitt or a Bob Berg, it says they're okay with it and love being on these shows. So now it's our responsibility to find out who do we want to bring on the shows that can bring more value and have better recognition, because I know once I brought Bob Berg on, and if you look at my profile, he's on my featured box. Everybody said, well, hey, if it was good enough for Bob, it's good enough for me. And they went first. And Bob would come back tomorrow if I had a reason for bringing him back. And I think that's the other key. It's just because someone can doesn't mean someone should. It's like when the right match comes up, or if Bob's promoting a book or something like that, because you want to continue to retain and complement whatever you have, not just exchange things that don't have growth. And, you know, even Harvey, talking to gentlemen like Jackson Hewitt and a few other people who are just legends and icons, it won't take long for someone to identify Harvey's talents, right? And if someone's running $1 billion company, I'm sure there's someone who says, hey, I'd love to have this element in my business, but I'm not going to be the guy, and I don't want to. And all of a sudden, or referrals, right? So I think that's where the show grows from. There's direct benefit from the people on the stage. There's a little bit of collateral benefit from the people in the audience. But who do you want to match up with and hopefully partner with? And me and Karl talked the other day of identifying 10 or 15 key people that you want to work with somehow, build with somehow, and how do you bring them in? I actually had a gentleman who was a caregiver, and he was in Detroit. Talked to him yesterday, actually referred to me by Beverly, and him and his wife, right out of University of Michigan, started because of his dad having an issue and them taking care of him and seeing what the resources were, decided, hey, let's start our own. Now this gentleman has a YouTube audience of 125,000 subscribers, gets 1 million views, has so many other collateral elements. He's really light on live streaming and light on LinkedIn. And now there's a match because there's synergies already in place. Because if you got all these subscribers, it's an easy thing to say, check out my show. You know, and numbers do mean something over time. You need to identify what they really mean, because the biggest resource we all have that we can't get any more of is time. So how are you going to invest your time, and what's the opportunity? And the idea is not to put all your eggs in one basket, but it is a feather in one's hat, because it validates something that maybe you weren't 100% sure of until it happens. So Con, you know, you have so much reach and involvement in so many different opportunities, from the past to the present to what you hope in the future. How do you see putting it all together in a better way?
Well, I find it interesting because you mentioned a word that I'm going to kind of, a thread that I'm going to pull on, if you will. And it's about finding the right expertise to support what you're trying to do, to bring value to your efforts. When people bring Karl in, for example, and they enlist his help, they're looking for his expertise, his keen eye on what truly is the value based on historical because the best predictor of the future in many ways is the past behavior, is how things have been operated. But he's also understands, like a good professional, how to prepare the company to make that leap forward. When he offers his services, he's not just offering money. He's offering expertise. He's offering a perspective about how to utilize that capital effectively. He can help people raise it, but he also knows how to guide them in maximizing that investment. It's the same thing for many of us. When people bring me in, they're looking for somebody who can come in and adds to the strength of their existing team. I'm not somebody necessarily that they need every day, but I'm somebody that they need in specific situations to really achieve a milestone, to complete a key project that they have, to make that leap from 100,000 in revenues to 250,000, and then to 500,000, and then to a million, and so on and so forth. Every time you need the right people around you to be able to figure that out. And even with the people that I work with, what I consult, when we do an analysis of their human capital, of the people, of the talent that they have in-house, when we evaluate that talent based on where they are and where they want to go, their people plan has to match their business strategy. It has to match what they're trying to do. It should be there to support it. It shouldn't be a separate thing. It shouldn't be random. And so from that perspective, we look at it and say, okay, where do we have holes? Do we have enough of the right people to get us to that next level? Do we have that expertise that we need? If we don't, then we need to simply ask the right question. And that is, do we have enough time to develop that in-house, to build it? Or do we have to buy it? Do we have to bring it from outside? And that's where I guide them through that process to make sure, again, they have a pipeline of leadership talent everywhere in their organization from top to bottom to be able to execute those plans. And if we don't, let's develop it. If we don't have enough time, let's recruit it. Let's buy it. Let's bring it in. These are the objective insights that I can bring from my expertise, the same way that you've done over the years, Don, and you can look at an opportunity very differently than somebody who's mired in it, or Karl looks at it a lot more objectively than somebody who has invested their heart and soul into a business and wonders why. I mean, for anybody that sold a house or bought a house, you see how much personal investment is in that. And it's very hard to be objective. That's why you need a real estate agent to come in and help you and set you straight and say, look, you think the house is worth that because you're evaluating your memories. A buyer's coming in and looking at the house, looking at it very differently. They want to create the memories. And so they're looking at it very, very differently about what it means to you and what value you put on something. The difference between an antique and junk is what it means to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you make a great point there, because one of the benefits that you don't know is when you have a product or service that can be easily integrated into an existing opportunity, right? So what you do may have some incremental value, but you have to look at the enterprise value it could have to somebody else. So if you say, like, Karl has a window product that could be revolutionary, well, that probably would have a lot of value to one of the biggest window manufacturers or installers.
Or not.
Yeah.
But I'm saying is, someone's treasure is someone's trash in some ways too. You know, how many times have you heard about the person that went to the yard sale, picked up a picture for $5, turned out to be worth $500,000? It's still the same picture, but it's only because of some history. Another side benefit that I'm seeing is the people you get to know and you get to prove yourself for. And an example this week happened with a gentleman I had on the show, got to know, and his name is Matthew Rolnick. And this week he put a post together with the 9 experts he wanted to share, and included me and tagged me as the LinkedIn Live expert. And here's a gentleman, has 130,000 students on Udemy, has best-selling books, has and he's got a show podcast. He had Mike Tyson on a few weeks ago. I mean, he's dealing with some major players, and just that benefit of him sharing that in a post with all of his audience brings more reciprocal benefit to it. So everything might seem like a seed you plant and something in your garden and you're hoping will blossom, but a lot of times people will plant your seed in their garden. And all of a sudden, how many does it take for someone to say, hey, I read Matt's column. You know, I've got a gentleman I was saying in Houston, huge guy, one of the movers and shakers there, sold his company for gobs of money. And he tags me every day. And I get 8 comments to me saying, I saw that, what's his name? I forgot his name offhand, tagged you and mentioned you. And you start to see your garden growing alongside and with other gardens. But in the early stages, all you see is you, and what you see is happening with you, but you don't know where that could expand to, and then how you can collaborate, because eventually it takes time for people to make a decision. You know, how many times do you enter into a new opportunity every week? How many times do you purchase something on LinkedIn? Not very often, but there's things in the back of your mind say, well, when the time's right, or when I have this opportunity, I'll remember this person. And, you know, if you look at a business, and I don't know, all businesses are somewhat different. Most people want to know, when are you going to be cash flow positive? Right? I mean, you might be making money and spending more money to make money than you have. And people would say, well, they're profitable, but is it sustainable? And I think that's really an important element, to know your own time frame. It's, you know, and if you said, well, it usually takes 2 or 3 years to get cash flow positive. Again, depending on your growth, depending on your, you know, intention. But knowing that, I mean, I see buildings going up, right? And when they put the foundation in and when they're doing all this construction, all it is money going out, no rents coming in. But anybody who invested in it knew all along it would take so much of this in money, so much of this in time. And then when it's completed properly, hopefully it justified the return. So, Karl, how do you navigate through these different questions that most people, you know, are ignorant to, and they're focused on just a few anchors to whatever they're thinking as far as the foundation? First is, well, you have to appreciate this, you have to understand this, and there's ways you can circumvent it, right? You can accelerate certain things, but it probably comes at greater cost. And the balance is always time and money. We've got Catherine Hall here. Great to see you, Catherine. Always nice to see new names and new faces. Welcome. And Karl, how do you set the table for people in a way that makes them more encouraged?
Well, we've been talking about conversations we've had before the show and earlier this week, and other conversations about having access to a suite of experts, of people who know something about something that may be of particular importance to a business today or tomorrow or somewhere down the road. And while Cohen was talking, I just got a vision of Wheel of Fortune, where I'm a contestant and I'm going, I need another vowel in order to put this word together. And I was trying to ask myself, am I a vowel or am I a consonant? You know, as we're going through this game, am I absolutely essential today for this particular business, which would make me a vowel, or am I somebody who may bring value, but I have to have the vowels before I can get to the consonants? And I think that every business, when you look at them, you're going to look at the management team and you're going to say, is this person got the experience? Do they have the knowledge? Do they understand their market? Do they understand their customer? Can they communicate? Do they have the skill set that you're looking for? And invariably, they're missing one more of these different skills and talents. And so you start saying, well, I just need to round out my team. I need to go reach for a vowel. I need to find Cohen to help me with getting my team organized and getting them focused and being the most that they can be. Or I need to get my word out or build my brand. I reach out to you, Don, and I go, hey, how would I present myself where the most people are going to see me with the smallest amount of investment of my time and money? So I'm getting the greatest efficiency in putting myself out there and letting myself be seen. And we talked the other day about how many people might be in this suite of experts, and I started making a list. I got over 25, and I had to stop. But as I build my community of businesses and people and organizations that are supporting funding of small businesses, it's a large list. But in my experience, I can look at a company and I do a quick assessment. What are they missing? Where can they need help? Where can they need it all the time versus just now or maybe a little bit later? And try to do introductions. Try to say, hey, I just met somebody. They need some help over here. Maybe they should talk to Con. Do an introduction. And within my network, I'm paying it forward. I'm paying it back. Depends upon what the day's current quota is on introductions. But it's how you go about understanding what's missing. And that only comes from experience. You can't get that out of a box. You can't get it out of a book, unfortunately, as much as I would like to. I'm also trying to train up one of my AI avatars to be able to answer some of these questions. But experience is going to tell the story. What are you missing? Go fill out the rest of your team. Assume that no matter how good you are, as we say, try to find somebody smarter, somebody better, somebody with more experience, who can help you be everything you want to be as a person, as a business. And that's going to move you way down the road towards getting to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's extremely valuable. And, everything that's worthwhile tends to be reciprocal in time, or it doesn't have much staying power. So when you light the flame, how do you keep it going? How do you expand it? There's a gentleman in Thailand who I got to know really well, was on his show. And actually the show's name is What Was Your Worst Investment? And it's been running for 12 years. He's got like 800 episodes. Great guy, Andrew Stoltz is his name. Grew up in Cleveland, went to Thailand 20-some years ago, became number one financial planner in Thailand, running an organization, a constant business show guest. And he was recommending me too. And it's because people recommend people they believe in and want to bring value, and in essence is a reciprocal gift to someone. Beverly has sent me a person every week that she was on somebody's show or was on her podcast, and she'd like to have them with her on our Tuesday show. And that was the gentleman yesterday. Got a lady from Spain who she's really closely related to, who's coming on next week. Deborah Dupree is very interested in what we're doing, may join what we're doing here. So, when you, and the key is how fast do you reciprocate? So when I was talking about Matthew, as soon as I saw that, I said, here's 5 days that I'd love to, choose one, let's get you back on the show again. And the closer you can come from thanking somebody for something they did, because just like, if you really support somebody, promote somebody, and nothing, all you hear is crickets, you decide I'm going to move on to the next person. And the faster and closer you are to an event, the more relevant you are. If you respond a week later, people may not even know what you're responding to. So how fast on the trigger are you to want to say, thank you so much. Here's something I'd like to offer you. Let's have a catch-up call. And, if you can find 10 or 15 people in your network or in someone else's network, because it's easy to say, well, Jackson Hewitt, it was a guest on Harvey's. He'd probably have an interest in maybe being on my show. And now connecting the dots to say, I loved your show with Harvey. Harvey and me are great colleagues. We're working together. I think now you got a reference point. Because the first question someone says, who are you? What are you? Why are you? And what are you talking to me for? And if you can give some context in advance, you can save some of that mystery. And if nothing else, all you're doing is congratulating somebody, loved your show, learned so much from you, really appreciate what you're doing. Well, that's a pretty good welcome mat that you can put out. So, you know, when you're looking at valuation, the best and most important valuation is, how do you value yourself? And how do you communicate the value you have? Because as you spread out to your team or your brand or your company, less of you starts to show up, and sometimes that's a good thing. But if it's a personal or professional relationship, it always starts me and you and what we can do. And you also know people who are at that level are busy. People already, you know, even Jackson was saying, I'm on a plane 3 days a week. I mean, this gentleman's probably in his 80s, and he doesn't have to get on a plane. He doesn't have to do anything. And that was Harvey's thing. Well, you're into the pet industry and you think that's number one. How many pets do you have? And that's when he said, it's not fair to a pet to leave a pet for 3 or 4 days a week. And that made sense. So there's a point where you reach for the stars, but you got your feet on the ground. And people, all people started at a certain point with themselves and an idea. Maybe they came from money, but they still had to go to work with it. So, Con, I mean, this thing is so dynamic but creative in where you place your bets every day. And we talked about people being the most valuable resource a company or even a person could have. How do you make sure you don't overwhelm yourself or bring people in who just aren't going to be a match? Because you can see great people, but if you're not part of it, you're just a fan at that point instead of a colleague.
Well, it's interesting, an interesting question, because there's so many thoughts going through my head as I heard you talking. We touched on so many different things. I'm going to try to kind of pull some of those threads together. One of the things that comes to mind is starting with knowing who you are. When Karl does a valuation of a company and he's looking at that and he's saying, okay, what's this worth? He's using a yardstick. He's using certain things. When we look at relationships, what value does it bring? But relative to what? Where I am, where I want to go, what can I bring to the table? You talked about reciprocity, Don. I mean, I saw Catherine come on board and I was so delighted because I connected with Catherine not too long ago. And she already, right off the bat, introduced me to someone else that is a fellow Greek. And she has done a wonderful job, not only as an author herself and a really recognized author, but also as a publicist, sharing her knowledge. And that's where people have hired her, because it's hard for you to lead somebody where you haven't been. And when companies start looking at valuation or exits, or they get to a certain point, I mean, Karl knows this, that the same team that got them to a certain level may not be the team that's going to be able to take them forward. And so sometimes you have to have those tough conversations and say, okay, what do I need here? I can write certain things, but maybe I need an experienced publicist that's going to help me complete my book, get it to the right people, promote it the right way. That's where Catherine comes in and helps authors, for example. And she does a wonderful job with that. Now, luckily, she sounds like she's going back to writing some of her own work and kind of getting back into the groove. So I'm sure she'll have some news for us at some point. But that's a big part of where you look at that expertise. Karl hit it out of the park when he said, you know what, hey, when we need LinkedIn Live expertise, we come to you, Don. If people need expertise about how to engage their workforce, transform their workplaces, or really be able to take advantage of their human capital to the best to get them where they need to go, they come to me. And that's part of why people bring us on board, because of the value that we bring to the operation, but also because we can evaluate their situations so well. So it's not just what somebody knows, it's who they know. Because beyond us, what they're buying in that relationship, what they're hiring in that relationship is our network. Because there are times when we will reach out to other experts to bring them in to help on a project, to do all those things. And that's truly the compounding value that we can bring to our relationships with people. It's what I know, but it's also who I know.
That's so beautiful and so important, because what one can be is the interface. right? So I know Harvey does an excellent show. And I know anybody who's in that industry or around it would want to be on his show because I know what the experience is. And I know Harvey's always looking for new guests. So anytime you can serve two needs at once and be that matchmaker, all of a sudden you have value. Catherine's a prime example. I'll reach out to her after the show because of what she's doing, because of her experience, and she would probably be a great match for Beverly or for Kelly or for us even. And it's only because someone knew you, took the time to watch the show, got to be introduced to the three of us, and pretty soon our mind starts spinning and says, well, how does this fit? Or where can this fit? Because you already have the groundwork in place. You know, Carl's doing his own show every week. Carl's looking for new guests, but also looking for relevant guests. You know, anybody can get somebody from another industry that's not aligned in any way, and you wonder, why did I match those people up? Or why did I bring myself into the situation? And that's where collaboration, especially when you're working against great numbers like 1 billion people on LinkedIn, and then if you add YouTube and Facebook and connect those, it gets even bigger. So at a certain point, you should arrive at a buffet that you created, right? And now you have all kinds of different things of interest, you know, of appetite, you know, and also being able to allow your audience to get variety. You know, bringing new people in, you know, it's like a guest star on a variety show. And I think that's what we have the ability to be, is be a facilitator, a curator, a moderator. And all of a sudden that raises us to a higher level of appreciation and recognition because you put it together for us, right? If it was just one of us talking to a group, and I don't know how people do it. I see people have hour shows all by themselves. I don't have enough wherewithal to build on myself. But if someone gives me a clue or a foothold, I can build on what they just said. I can pivot to the audience. You know, Catherine, just to recognize, I'm a book publicist and I provide great guests for podcasters. I only promote people I believe in who are making a difference. I've been doing this for 44 years. That's unbelievable. Just that consistency. Real quick, to get back to the gentleman I mentioned before, he created an opportunity that he will place you in 15 very popular podcasts every month, but it's like $12,000, right? Now, do you have the bandwidth? Do you have the ability to justify that exposure? And if it's just telling your story, that's not enough. It has to again say, how do I get my 12 grand back? In what period of time or in what type of currency? But it does show you the opportunities are there, and it's matching people up with the right people. And then it continues to expand through that. So if your network's 20, 30, 50, you're going to have so much more coming back to you, but it's just like a snowball going up a hill. It takes forever. On the way down, you can't stop it. The key is, how do you get it beyond all those challenges and tough times? And I always ask myself, where is the next growth spurt? You know, we talked about Amazon. At the same time, we could have been talking about Sears, you know, and that was just a huge, unbelievable company that America was always focused on. And then you could just see the future. You could just see it grinding down while something was speeding up. Con made the example of Zoom. Well, if one thinks if this happens, this is going to happen, that's where the shift comes in. And it's really, how fast are you on the forefront of something instead of the rear of something? Real quick, Omar's here. Omar's a great guy, includes me in a lot of stuff. I'm now putting together 5 business questions for a show he asked me to come up with. And it's little things like that that show you have value. right? They could have picked anybody, could have done it themselves, but says, hey, and then he'll mention me and I'll get exposure and we get to talk again. Catherine says, thank you so much. I guess she's talking to all of us. And beautifully said, which is beautiful in itself. Thank you, Catherine. And Karl, we sure cover a lot of ground. I know we talked about valuation as being the key word, but I think everything we talked about has some sort of value, direct or indirect, and again can be leveraged. It's like, how do you choose what you like your clothes? What do you choose as your wardrobe today? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a baseball player? Do you want to be a business person? And it's the same thing here. Is you got all these players. Who do you want to interact with today? And also tracking that. When's the last time I sent something? I mean, sometimes you call somebody and they never call you back for 6 weeks. And during that 6 weeks, you think, well, they don't care. I'm not important. I mean, that's yourself talking until you get to talk to them. But, they give you clues. And most people, when they say something, you should just believe it. Karl, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a constant assessment. As Con pointed out, first you have to know yourself. And then, like baking a cake, if I'm an ingredient in a recipe, what am I going to combine with that's going to have a greater positive outcome? And there will be some people I can work with which actually diminish me or take time away from me, or I call bad investments. And there's other people like you and Con who amplify me, who make me look better than I really am. So it's always a pleasure to be on the show. I think that you look at everybody around you, you look at the expertise you need to accomplish whatever your personal or your business goals are. And then you're doing constant evaluation. Can they help me? Can I help them? Can I maintain a relationship with them that's positive for both of us? And so you're giving a lot of the times with an expectation somewhere, somehow you may get something back, but you have to be careful not to get transactional about it and demand instant gratification. I'm happy when somebody calls me I haven't talked to in a year or two ago and says, hey, Carl, I've been looking for you. And I'm going, yeah, I've tried to be everywhere so you can see me, but here I am. I think that it's just a matter of having a personal strategy, recognizing that whatever you do is going to be better if you're part of a team or part of a community, that's going to make you worth more. These are old stories about a guy who broke a stick and said, look, I can break a stick, but if I get a bundle of sticks, I can't break the entire bundle. Well, that's a community. That's what you should be thinking about is how can you improve yourself? How can you improve others by helping others, whether it's by referral or doing something for them? And over time, that grows and becomes more powerful, and it becomes a great asset of yours that other people don't have, which gives you a competitive advantage and makes you stand out from everybody else.
Well, I think when you can layer on a little bit of a personal element, that helps too. Like my call yesterday was to the gentleman in Livonia, Michigan. Well, I spent my growing up in Detroit, right? And when you're both from the same city and you remember the same kind of things or restaurants or whatever, it makes you more family oriented. And I think that's what you want to do is build a family of like-minded colleagues and friends that nobody's really looking, how do I get paid by talking to you? Nobody's that short-sighted, but how do I learn from you? I mean, it's just like if you have a bunch of comics going on the road and somebody said, I just played Boston. This is a club you got to check out. And pretty soon, well, thank you so much. And by the way, I was in Cleveland and here's what I learned there. And now you're getting it from the horse's mouth versus leaving it to yourself because you always have plenty of yourself to yourself. It's really buying those vowels that says, hey, this is what I've been looking for. Or, hey, if I bought, and that, I watch Wheel of Fortune or have, and I'm just the person that give me every vowel, right? If I start with $1,000, give me 4 vowels because I'd rather have less money and solve the puzzle than try to save a few $100, especially when you don't know if you're going to get another turn, and be a winner, because winning means something. Just like, and also losing means something. I think part of qualifying is what was your biggest failure? What did you learn from it? It wasn't that I failed. It's like, here's what I'm never going to do again. Or next time I have a shot, here's what I'm going to make sure I do. And most of the time is I just wasn't right and didn't know it. And if I would have got some expert advice, some fractional individuals who knew what they were doing, it could have made all the difference. So, people have to be more generous with their way of thinking and their way of doing. And, it still is going to come down to you, right? After you hear what somebody else say, well, I'll take some of that, but I'm not a big believer. And other people say, that's just what I was looking for. That's the key to the door I haven't been able to open. So now that we're kind of at the end, Con, what's your final words and thoughts that you can share with the audience to have them go on their way and be more successful than they ever imagined?
Well, I'm going to save my final word for one person from our audience, for our friend Kerry. I've been looking at his comment out here that he posted earlier on, and I want to make sure that I honor him, honor his input here, and offer him a 30-second coaching. Kerry, that's what since we're talking about valuation today and value that we bring, figure out what problem a potential employer is trying to solve and become the solution to that problem. And you will be invaluable, my friend. You will be able to be taken on board, and somebody will take a chance on you, because it's not really a chance when you know that somebody can solve a problem. Show them that you can solve a problem for them, understand what that problem is, and between your empathy and understanding and your confidence and expertise and authority that you can solve that problem, you will win them over, my friend. So from that perspective, I will want to leave him with that comment, that 30-second coaching.
Very thoughtful, very generous, and I think very valuable. Kerry, hope you can take advantage of that advice. And, I think the thing too is wherever you're at isn't where you want to be, it's now time to get your name out there. And there are groups like this and shows like this all over, and endear yourself to the group, because you have to us, just like Dennis is here almost every day. And, it's the tried and true that gives you the confidence, not the fair weather friends that show up when they can get some benefit, but the everyday, because we've all been there. We've all been at the beginning. We've also been at the bottom at times from maybe being at the top. And you got to be resourceful, resilient, and you got to be your own best friend. And I think that's important. When no one loves you, you got to love yourself a little bit more. And you have to take advantage of that. So, Karl?
Yeah, I'm just going to tag on to what Con said. You have to know yourself. You have to know where you bring value, where you are the solution to the problem. But if you're talking to a company where you're not the solution to their problem, don't talk to them. Go talk to somebody else. There's lots of people out there who may not appreciate you, no matter how much you say and do, because they're caught up in their own problem. They're not seeing outsiders as a potential solution. Somehow they've taken it personally that they're the only one who can fix the problem, and there's not anything you can do about it. That is what we call a problem beyond cure. So look around for employers a little more open-minded. It may demonstrate, how they think and go about solving problems, where they may look outside. They may look for that fix that you represent, and start your search there, because you'll spend your time more effectively.
Well, I think that's great advice. And one more thing is, what is your passion, right? And follow your passion. And it seems like you love sharing jokes, creating fun situations. Just what comes to mind is my wife is very involved with helping, especially people in the family who require some caregiving. Some are in assisted living centers, but what's so exciting to her is every day they bring in a special talent, right? There's a person who plays the guitar, someone who sings. Why not be the jokester? Why not be the fun element? Because every company needs a little bit of relief. Everybody needs a little fun. So why not market yourself as that person? Start out in places that, maybe give you 100 or 200 bucks to show up for an hour or two. But there's so many organizations, so many institutions that would love to have someone who can come on and make people a little happier for that time. And it also gives you an opportunity to sharpen your skill set. Everybody's got to start at the beginning. Let's say how long you stay there is really up to how fast you can climb. But put your assets to use, and don't try to be somebody you're not. Don't try to be a square hole that tries to fit into a round peg, or however you want to call it. So hopefully, Carrie, we've given you a little bit of special premium attention. And the other thing we do have here is we're rooting for you. Your success, come back in a week and said, hey, I did something I might not have done without your prodding or advice, makes us feel better for the time we spend here, because that's how you value your time, is how much good did you leave when you left, and how much good did you take when you left, and then how do you build on those experiences. So want to thank everybody, especially Catherine Hall. You've been the special guest in the audience. Hopefully in time we can get you as a special guest on the show. And Carrie says in closing, I love working on computers. I thank you for everyone. Well, follow your love, because it'll keep you warm when maybe the rest of the world won't. And learning is earning, right? So, anything you can do to up your skill set, up your motivation, up your presentation, there's never enough time in the day when you focus it and build on it. So anyways, we could talk forever, but because we don't, we'll have to talk again. Catherine says, lovely listening. Should have made it a 2-hour show. but with that said, come back tomorrow. It'll be me and Kelly. Kelly's been on forever. She also has the Awesome Journey with Christy Howard on Tuesdays, and is doing some magnificent things. And, it's so cool to look back and see where you started with somebody and see where they are now. And that gives you hope that if they can do it, you can do it. And if nothing else, you can do it better together. Okay, last thing, Carrie. Hope everyone has a great and cheesy day. I've been still learning. Well, there's no end to learning. No matter how old you are, no matter where you are, there's something new that you haven't learned yet that might make a difference. Karl, Con, thank you so much. And we'll talk